How do you relay, say that again, how do you relay that you want to be forgiven? Oh, great question. How about if somebody has offended you, how do you let somebody know that you're willing to forgive them if they've never asked for that forgiveness? And the answer to that is, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. It's a great question, and I wish I could. Yeah, classified ads, Facebook, everybody. I'm willing to forgive Bill Young because of the dirty, rotten things he did to me. But I'm just saying. Somebody had a comment. Maybe you had an answer to that, Daniel.
Yeah, I guess part of that is always trying to be able to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
After you already asked for forgiveness.
Yeah.
God forgive. How do you forgive yourself?
What a great question. If you've asked forgiveness and the person has granted you forgiveness, how do you forgive yourself? The way you forgive yourself is that you recognize that your sin was paid for on the cross. Your sin is already paid. And if God doesn't hold you, if He's not hammering you because of that sin, then you don't have the right to hammer yourself. What you say when you don't forgive yourself is that my sin is bigger than Christ's death. And it's a very, very dangerous thing to do. And you have to really come to that realization that Christ has forgiven me. He's wiped the slate clean. And He has paid for that already on the cross. I love what the Word of God says, that He who knew no sin became sin for us. Now think about what that verse says. Some of you are going to be offended by what I'm about to say. But I don't care. He who knew no sin became sin for us. You know what that means? That means that Jesus became your sin on the cross. That means that Jesus hung on the cross as a drunk. Jesus hung on the cross as an adulterer. Jesus hung on the cross as a liar. Now, did He commit any of those? No. He took on that sin Himself. He who knew no sin became the sin. That's why it was so vile. That's why God the Father had to turn His face away from Him, because it was so horrible that He was that sin on the cross. That thing that you did that offended somebody else was nailed to the cross and died on the cross. If you want to resurrect it, you're digging up dead stuff out of the ground. You're digging up something vile and awful that has already died and been done with. Don't do it to yourself. But more importantly, don't do it to God. God's saying, wait a minute, wasn't my death enough for you? And the answer is, yes. Yes. He became that sin that you're having a struggle with. He became that sin on the cross. I would suggest that instead of beating yourself up over it, that you start thanking God for becoming your sin on the cross. And let Him bring a whole new dimension of freshness and authority and love. Not only for yourself, but for life. Because you have a destiny, a purpose, a plan. Yes, sir?
Do you really think that has to be done in public? Like going up to the altar and getting hit by the Holy Ghost and falling down?
No, I don't. I don't believe that at all. That's something that we started doing. In fact, that was something that, was it not Finnegan? Finley? Anyway, some evangelists from years ago started telling people, you got to come to the front and do all of that. That was not so. The early church didn't do that. In fact, it's interesting, Charles Spurgeon would not have public calls to the altar, for people to come down and get saved. He wouldn't do it because he said, if you think that I'm going to let you assuage your guilt by coming down here and getting right, forget it. He said, it will be evident in your life if you've been made right with Christ. So I don't think that, in fact, I will tell you right now, Sunday, when I preach next Sunday, and by the way, I'm going to ask you to do something very important. I'm going to ask you to really pray this week for me for next Sunday. I'm given 20 minutes to preach. Yeah. So anyway, so how I can get it in 20 minutes, I don't know, but I'm I'm going to preach. But I'm really, one of the things that I want to close with is I want to give an altar call, but more importantly, what I want to give is a call to get right with Christ. And if you want to come to the front, great. But if you don't, get right where you are. That's the critical, important thing. The issue is getting right with God. And again, like I said, confession is as public as the sin itself. If I need to get right with God, and God says you need to go, and as a display, I mean, the Bible does say, if you confess Jesus is Lord, and it's evident in your life, then I will be Lord, you will be saved. There is that, and people use that verse, and I can understand that. But it's a lifestyle thing. It isn't just walking to the front. By the way, I made so many walks up and down the aisle before I got saved. I mean, I got baptized when I was 11 years old, and I didn't get saved till I was 18. Yes, sir.
Well, I see some people, they were exposed and all that, doing something, committing sin, and they got the 99. Like a husband, running around with his wife or something. That wife say, tell me who it is, tell me the truth.
Right.
Tell me the truth and we can work for it, but if you don't tell me the truth, you're going to lose your family.
Right. And obviously she knows, and that confession needs to be as public. Now, are you going to say, should you not admit to your wife? I'm not getting into that discussion now. Okay? Because the answer is, my wife's here. I have to be careful. Of course, you have to work things out with your spouse. I mean, you've got to deal with those issues. But that's for another lesson at another time. And don't hit me up after class and go, oh, what do I do now? Because, to answer Lake Mary's question, I don't know. All right.